What is up, fuckers? Wow, did we have a gargantuan week in fantasy and in NFL as well. We have a lot to go through, so let's just dive right in. League notifications for this week are, as everybody should know, tonight is the first meetup of our 3 league meetups for the season for gathering name points. And we're going to be at the Parkway Tavern on Flamingo and Decatur. We're going to be watching my Giants versus the Dallas Crap Boys in New York on Thursday Night Football. I'm going to be covering the details of the game further later on in the episode, but I will see you fuckers later tonight. So since we're going to be diving into everything further on in the episode, it's going to be a little bit unusual, but I'm going to start off by shouting out to the Dub Club, Donnie, Raul, Janel Hertz, Eric, and Henson. Janel Hertz got their first clapping of the year. Congratulations. It was their first victory of the year, but their first clapping as well. We're going to go over that later in the breakdown. And basically the biggest news of the league is Henson breaking the 200 mark. And a landmark so monumental that I had to sit there and think about what we're going to call this. And in the spirit of bung reamers being truly about alcohol and whiskey barrels, we're going to call it a double barrel. So, insinuating that a full barrel is 100 points and a double barrel is the 200 points. We can start getting used to using that verbiage in the league. I'll probably start making little jokes about, oh, he didn't even have a full barrel. Anyway, things in our league have been competitive as ever. If you've taken a look at the scoreboard, we have a 2-way tie for first, Henny and Raul. Of course, decided by the tiebreaker, which is points for. Then we have Donnie. Then we have a 7-way tie for fourth. That's right. The last 7 places in our league are all currently being decided by the tiebreaker. We all have the same record. Now, I know it's always been close in our league, but I really think this is the first time it's been this ridiculous. And going on, before we get into the recap of the full games in our fantasy league this week, I wanted to go ahead and cry a couple of tears into my cereal. That's right. I got the Tuesday Blues and Greg as well, which I think mine was kind of bullshit because my team barely made it into the lead by Sunday night. I was up by 2 points, but I ended up getting clapped because if anybody watched the doubleheader on Monday night, Josh Allen was like Oprah Winfrey, just giving out touchdowns to everybody. You get a touchdown. You get a touchdown. You get a touchdown. Next up, I wanted to add another new little interesting twist into our fantasy terminology, so to speak, and that is constipated rosters. That is, teams that could have won if they set their lineup right. Now, unfortunately, I don't mean to rip on my boy Greg twice back-to-back on the Tuesday Blues and the constipated rosters, but he lost his game by 5 points. Further details on that later on in the episode, but he would have won if he had just started Jacoby Myers, who's on his bench. So, sorry Greg, but your roster just couldn't get it out today. And then we also have an honorable runner-up, although I admit that this isn't a full constipated roster, but I just wanted to bring it up as an example in our first week. As a secondary example, Chef, if he would have started Lazard and Eckler instead of Stevenson and Tyreek Hill, he would have had an extra 22.5 points, which would have got him within the 10 points of the clapping. Like I said, it's not a full-on, official constipation, but it would have got him definitely a lot closer, and so he comes up in second place. Maybe you don't need to take the laxative now, but maybe just go buy some and have it ready. And back by popular demand, we have the bench warmers segment. So I want to start off with Eric, who had Chuba Hubbard on his bench with 27 points. Jalen Hurts had Rome Odunze on their bench with 20 points, and Khalil Shakir with 16 points on their bench. Edwin had Devin Singletary with 13.8 and Stephon Diggs with 15. Greg had Jacoby Myers with 17.7, as previously alluded to in the episode just a moment ago. Raul had Amari Cooper that had a whopping 24-point performance on his bench, although it didn't really matter for his matchup. Donnie left Terry McLaurin with 18.8 on the bench, and I had Jaden Daniels with 34 points just sitting there. Now, this is more players than are on a regular roster, so if I just did the top 6-man roster, which is 1 quarterback and 5 skill players, like in fantasy, it would have been 142 points, which would have once again beat 7 of us this week in our league. In this week's fantasy matchup recap, Jalen Hurts pulled off a victory above Edwin's team at 150 over 89 points. Anthony Richardson on Edwin's team, ouch, 6.75 points. Insane. On the opposite side, Dak Prescott with 37 points, even though fuck the Cowboys. And how did he score that much, even though they got their asses whooped in that matchup? On Edwin's team, Aaron Jones made 25 points with Bijan and Garrett Wilson both scoring 11-12 points respectively. But unfortunately, everybody else on the team was within the single digits. As the contrast on Jalen Hurts' side, Zach Charbonnet, 24 points. Jamar Chase, 26 points. Chris Olave, 17 points. Hell, even the kicker got in on the action, Brandon Aubrey, with 11 points. Next up was the very close matchup of Greg and Raul, as I mentioned, which finished within 5 points. Both quarterbacks scoring 12, 13 points. Baker Mayfield, CJ Stroud. Looks like neither side had any crazy breakout performances except for Rashee Rice on Greg's side. I guess the Marvin Harrison Rashee Rice comparison continues, as this week goes to Rashee. Next up was my matchup against Donnie, where he beat me 163 to 122. He was gunning for top scorer of the week, but then things got out of hand when Henson started going off. Josh Allen, as I mentioned earlier, was just handing out free touchdowns to everybody. 41 points in our league. Jonathan Taylor, 28 points. Deontay Johnson, 22 points. DK Metcalf, 18 points. And even the Seahawks defense with 19 points. Which I thought the Jets defense did a great job to set me up at the beginning of the week with 23 points. But unfortunately, their performance with Malik Neighbors having 24 points, Kyron Williams having 30 points, and Zach Moss having 18 points was not enough, with piece of shit Hurts on the shit-ass Eagles giving me 11 points. And unfortunately, Derek Garbage throws to Rashid Shaheed resulted in a 0 for his performance. Next up, Eric clapped Cody at 104 to 71 points, even though Chef had Lamar Jackson with a great performance of 29 points. The rest of his team looked like it pretty much pooped in their pants. Mark Andrews, 0.0. Tyreek Hill, 5.5. Ramondre Stevenson, negative 2.7. On the other hand, Derrick Henry went off with 31 points, as well as Breece Hall with 16, which is a good performance. And the Colts defense had 17, which looks like was the majority of the players that carried Eric's team to a victory this week. And last of all, and not least by contrast, actually, the most of all clapping I think that's ever happened in our league ever. Henson threw 1,000 bottles of baby oil Diddy party on Vaughn with the final score of 204 to 60. Shout out Chef, that was his joke. But oh my goodness, Joe Burrow 34, Saquon Barkley 34, Jawan Jennings, 41 points. How the fuck did you predict that and start this motherfucker? Amon-Ra, 17. Dallas Goedert, 22 points. Jesus Christ. I mean, it didn't help that Vaughn's team had Gus Edwards with 0.9 and Javonte Williams with 1.1. Dalton Schultz with 2.1. And the Raiders defense, which had a 0. So, I mean, congratulations, Henson. As we mentioned before, this is the first double barrel score of the Bung Reamer's history. And I think this is the first and widest clapping. He spread them so far apart that you could drive a semi through there in the history of our league. Congratulations. That's it for this week's matchup recap. And last but not least, we're going to go over my prediction for tonight's game, which features my New York Giants and the piece of shit Cowboys. So, Giants versus Cowboys in MetLife Stadium. We have a tied record in the division currently, so this game is very crucial to both teams. The Cowboys are favored by 5.5, and the over-under is 44.5. So, I wanted to mention a crazy stat involving the underdogs for this season. Now, as we sit, before any of the games have kicked off for week 4, out of the 17 games so far this season that had a spread of 5.5 or more, the underdogs are 14-3 with 10 straight up wins. So it's not even like they covered, they just straight up won. That's how crazy this season has been. So I'm hoping that that trend continues tonight and my underdog Giants can show up these Cowboys and take another step up in our division when everyone is counting us out. So as far as my bet for the season long, if everyone's keeping track, I'm 2-1 so far. And tonight, I'm taking a player touchdown. I'm going to bet that Malik Neighbors scores a touchdown at one point throughout the night. And that will be my Thursday night wager going on to either make me even going forward if I lose or give me the edge in 3-1 if I'm right. So, like I said, I will see you fuckers later tonight. Those of you who are showing up to watch the matchup with us. It's going to be a fun night. We're going to have some brews. We're going to play some lawn games. And we're going to watch another Thursday night matchup starting off week 4 to kick us off into this weekend. I know I'll be watching at the edge of my seat playing against Raul in our crucial matchup this week. May the best rosters win. Take your Thursday night players out of the flex and check back in next week where you'll see me on the Fantasy Freestyle Podcast.